Chapter 3. Rezida Donauri. It was raining in Unity Plaza when he stepped out of the hotel and into the surrounding biodome. It wasn't true rain in the sense that he was used to back in the mountains, but they had built Unity Station tall enough that the humidity from the oxygen-generating plants would condense on the glass of the ceiling and drip down onto the open spaces below. It was a clever use of the system, if it had been planned that way, Altmann thought, giving the illusion of weather on the moon. It was fitting, too, given the mood left over from yesterday's wake and then restless night. He decided that a walk around the musty station wasn't conducive to the state of mind that he wanted to be in. He needed to book a flight to Tiras. Secretary Chawla was clear as she had explained the bequeathment the evening before. If he didn't travel to his parents' estate as soon as possible, he risked losing it to the first interested party, as was the law in Tiras. He navigated to the appointment request page for customs on his terminal and filled it out in the soonest possible slot that morning. Then he found a simple coffee stand and ordered a black one to nurse for an hour before he had to make his way to the tram station. As his mind absorbed the caffeine, his muddled thoughts clarified and he started planning the next stage of his trip. He had never been to Tiras and had only met in person 2 or 3 Manisae. That had been years ago at some vague official function. All in all, his knowledge of the Manisae and their culture was lacking. He began performing searches on the local network for any articles or primers that he might study to familiarize himself with his soon-to-be hosts. But after 15 minutes, he set his terminal down in exasperation. Most of what was available was repetitive and shallow at best, specious and incendiary at worst. The former set of information was mostly common knowledge, and Altmann had discounted it as mostly common sense. He, like every child since his brother's generation within the Staatenbund, learned the basics of who the Manisae are. There were major holes in that knowledge, of course. The Manisae were very guarded about their history and origins, and only let a handful of hints about their technology leave their clutches, mainly to titans of industry and the state. The memory crystal technology, Sentite it was branded, was the only instance of technology that the Manisae had gifted to the entirety of humanity. Sort of a reverse housewarming present, it was generally thought. Laiku Industries had managed to get a hold of a partnership with some unnamed Manisae technological organization and had fabricated all of the surface-to-surface shuttles that serviced transits between the 3 major ports. Laiku had been a smaller firm dabbling in advanced battery tech before Unity, and had been one of the most far-sighted companies to invest in what had become a huge industry. Their share in the building of Unity Station in Hosa Bengaluru to the east was significant. Some other corporations and organizations held sway on Luna, but without access to the largest shipping and transportation company between the Earth and Luna, they all came second. The small cafe had become crowded as the morning progressed. The pseudo-rain had halted as well, likely due to the blowers that the station management had directed upward to dry the ceiling. The weather was highly controlled on Luna. A woman approached Altmann's table and waited for him to look up. He had assumed that she was there to take the additional chair and pull it to her companion's table, so he just waved a confirmation to the unspoken request without looking up from his terminal. Instead, she pulled out the chair and sat down facing him. "Thanks, this place is really crowded," she said to him. Slightly perturbed by the misunderstanding and the now broken solitude that he had wanted to maintain, he looked up and with an effort at civility said, "Not a problem. I was just finishing up here anyway. Need to make an appointment at the port." Hoping this would put a cap on any further conversation, he started to shift, to rise and return the cup to the bar. "Are you on the next transit to Tiras?" she asked, apparently eager for a chat. Stifling his annoyance in favor of the manners his mother had impressed on him, he resettled into the chair and checked the time. Deciding that he had at least a half hour before he needed to be in the customs office, and that the cafe was more comfortable to wait at than the benches there, he reciprocated the woman's friendliness. "Yes, first time actually. I'm assuming that there will be a scroll of forms to fill out." Despite his family name, bureaucracy still overrode everything. "Yeah, probably. I'm headed there too, but I've been once before, and my visa is still valid." "Are you with Aryabhata University? I've never seen you there, but it's big and most of the people that travel to Tiras are connected somehow." "No, actually my sister works there, but I'm traveling on a personal matter." "Oh, maybe I know her. What's her name?" Hildy Hernandez, Alson said without thinking. Hildy was the nickname that only he and his brother used for her since childhood. He knew that she had been going by her middle name for years now, but he hadn't made the effort to shift to it. It just felt weird. I don't know any Hildy Hernandez. She looked disappointed. But I know of a Dr. Hernandez in the Materials Sciences Department. I think her name is Jin, though. Ah, yes, that's her. I still call her by her first name. Habit, you know. That's so cool. I don't know her personally, but I've followed her work for years. Sentite development is a hobby of mine, even though it doesn't overlap with my field. She finished prematurely, and her brow furrowed as if she had made a connection in her mind. Are you Ehrenfeld Hernandez, then? I'm sorry, I just realized why you're here. My condolences on the passing of your father. Thank you, but no, I'm not Ehrenfeld. That's my brother. I'm Alson, the youngest of the Hernandezes. He added the latter involuntarily. Even though he was pushing 40, his hindbrain had forced it out, observing that the woman across from him was younger by at least a handful of years, and not unattractive. Objectively striking, in fact. His annoyance at the interruption had dissipated, allowing him to observe his new companion for the first time. She was probably in her early 30s, with dark, short-cropped hair and bronzed skin, which was in contrast to his thinning gray-brown hair and pinkish skin that could afford more sunlight. She looked like she would fit in seamlessly with the locals of the village where he had most recently called home, of which he was also the palest by far. But the years in her face spoke of a studious woman and one who had a good sense of humor. She extended her hand across the small table. I'm sorry for my lapse. I'm Professor Dr. Rezida Donauri. Pleased to meet you, Alson Hernandez. The pleasure's all mine, he responded, realizing that it was more true now than it would have been 15 minutes ago. Then, realizing that the time had slipped away, he said, I'm sorry, Dr. Donauri. I really must be going to this appointment. Perhaps I'll see you again in transit, though. He offered her a smile and was warmed by the one she offered back. Looking forward to it, she said. And call me Rez. Well, then call me Als, he responded, and turned to head toward the tram headed to customs. Only when he was seated in the maglev transport did he allow himself to question his last response. He'd never gone by Als before, always Alson. Als was what his father's friends called him, short for Alvaro, but it was too late to go back now. By the time he saw Rez on the shuttle again, he wouldn't be able to change his name back to Alson without it seeming antisocial. Customs was, in essence, everything he had expected it to be. Everything was newer and perhaps more comfortable than he thought it would be, and there was no graffiti or small ink circles on the counters and benches, but the type of people behind the counter were the standard bureaucrats, bored and repetitive. He scanned the requisite codes onto his terminal, filled them out digitally, and then submitted them wirelessly through the partition. His appointment was only half an hour late, which was a nice change from the ones he was familiar with, but there were no more pleasant surprises after that. The interview room was still a bare cube, with a table and 2 chairs. The small cup with artificial flowers on the table was a sorry attempt to make the room appear more than it was, and probably doubled as an interrogation room when removed. The interview was rote as well. Though there was little precedent for personal trips to Tiras, there had been a form, and he filled it out correctly. The woman conducting the ordeal rarely looked him in the face, opting to be preoccupied with the terminal containing whatever personal information of his that they had on file, likely more than he would be comfortable with if he had known. A few short questions and answers, and she was satisfied. The visa was approved and digitally assigned to his profile. He was free to travel to Tiras, and thankfully the shuttle was still in port. Alson, now Als, gathered his small duffel and didn't look back.